tonight ordered to leave. Pierre Poilievre gets ejected from the House of Commons.
When will we put an end to this wacko policy by this wacko Prime Minister?
The opposition leader's outburst and ousting.
I order you to withdraw from the House.
Rising tensions in Parliament and a Conservative walkout in protest. Caught in the chaos of a high-speed pursuit, a highway tragedy leaves grandparents and a baby dead.
This is a tragedy, just such a sad situation.
We will not stop, we will not rest.
Plus, protesters stand firm at McGill and occupy a campus building at Columbia. Also, the reaction to a sexist remark made by an NHL coach.
Like the second something happens, we might as well put skirts on them.
And moving the goalposts.
The whole globe is going to be watching Vancouver.
The high costs of hosting the beautiful game.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. Question period is known for its sometimes combative and chaotic exchanges, but today's clash in the Commons was unusually testy. The Speaker of the House kicked out Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre over what he called unparliamentary language directed at the Prime Minister, who was also cautioned over language he used. And the feud extended well beyond the lower chamber. CTV's Michael Couture on what prompted the political drama and the reaction.
When will we put an end to this wacko policy by this wacko Prime Minister?
Calling people names is considered unparliamentary, so the Speaker of the House asked Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre to withdraw the comment 4 times.
Mr. Speaker, I replace the word wacko with extremist.
After not complying, Poilievre was booted from question period.
I order you to withdraw from the House and from any participation by video conference for the remainder of this day's sitting.
Most of Poilievre's caucus followed him out, incensed at what had happened.
The fact that the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada was thrown out of there for doing his exact job is shameful. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
It's not the job, of course, of the Speaker, because he's a Liberal, to protect a Prime Minister whose wacko policies are putting people's lives in danger.
At issue was the government's stance on the decriminalization of certain illicit drugs. But the NDP believes Conservative outrage is part of a bigger plan.
I think a lot of this is about Conservatives trying to fundraise off hot-button issues.
Some Liberals were less diplomatic.
That guy's never shut his mouth in his life. Who silences him? He keeps saying dumb things. I think it would be good if he shut up. He shut his yap once in a while.
While some Conservatives feel Poilievre was taking a stand, it's unclear if that's how voters will see it.
There was an opportunity again to appear to be prime ministerial, to appear statesperson-like, if you like, and this was the choice instead.
Poilievre's next choice will be whether or not to attend question period tomorrow, the day when Prime Minister Justin Trudeau typically takes all questions. Omar?
All right, Mike, thanks. Let's bring in CTV's chief political correspondent, Vassy Kapelos, now for analysis. Vassy, getting kicked out of the Commons, how rare is this, and what's the long-term impact here?
Hi, Omar. Yeah, it is pretty rare. It's only happened, I think our producers looked up, 3 times in the last decade. The last time an opposition party leader got kicked out was Jagmeet Singh back in 2020 for calling a Bloc MP racist. But the leader of the official opposition getting kicked out, I can certainly say it's not something I've witnessed in my decade here on Parliament Hill. As for what kind of impact this will have, I think that kind of remains to be determined. The Liberals are really hoping they can use what happened in the House of Commons to help frame their view of Poilievre in Canadians' eyes. The Conservatives don't seem too troubled about that prospect just because of how far they are ahead in the polls. The only caveat I would add to that is those poll numbers could be as far as a year and a half out from the next election. And so how sure they or how confident they are they remain exactly where they are with events like what unfolded today, I believe is probably an open question. Omar?
All right, Vassy Kapelos in Ottawa tonight. Vassy, thank you. And staying in Ottawa, the finance minister revealed today one of the most controversial aspects of the federal government's financial blueprint will not be included in the upcoming bill to implement the budget, but that changes to how capital gains are taxed in Canada are coming. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver explains.
Good afternoon, ministers.
The finance minister says she is committed to changing how capital gains are taxed, yet that controversial move is being left out of the 663-page budget bill being tabled in the coming days.
We were explicit about that plan in the budget, including details in the tax annex, and I look forward to tabling implementing legislation.
Freeland wouldn't say when that tax bill will be introduced, only that it will happen. If passed, the bill would cement an increase to the inclusion rate on capital gains. So 2/3 of capital gains over $250,000 realized from most individual investments would be taxed at the marginal tax rate.
I do think that they welcome the possibility of a standalone clash on this issue. I think they think that this is good politics for them.
The finance minister denied the delay was to pick a fight with the Conservatives, but Freeland didn't say no when asked whether the government was considering changes. This tax expert thinks the Liberals may be considering carve-outs for certain groups, like doctors and cottage owners who feel unfairly targeted.
There are some lower-income Canadians, fixed-income Canadians, who may have saved and purchased a second property as a retirement nest egg, and their capital gain is going to be included in the higher rate, even though they're relatively low income. They're certainly not millionaires.
The budget gave taxpayers time to consider their options, since the new capital gains changes aren't set to take effect until June 25th. But that means the Liberals are under a time crunch, Omar, to introduce and pass this new tax bill.
All right, Annie Bergeron-Oliver, thank you. There is heartbreak in a community in southwestern Ontario tonight after a horrifying high-speed chase that ended in tragedy, claiming the lives of an infant and the child's grandparents. Here's CTV's Adrian Gabriel.
Holy man! A harrowing high-speed chase that ended in horror.
But we did hear the explosion of the car.
Moments before the deadly crash, Brody Mills took this shocking video.
So I was in the left lane doing 120 with normal traffic, and it was as if I was parked on the highway.
A getaway driver speeding the wrong way on the 401, Canada's busiest stretch of highway, with police giving chase.
And as they got closer and closer, it became evident that they were on our side of the road.
This angle of the pursuit gives a direct view of what drivers were facing head on.
A white van drive past us, followed by about 15 to 20 police cars.
Then moments later, the catastrophic crash involving 6 vehicles unfolding in real time, killing 4 people, including 2 grandparents and their grandchild.
An occupant of the cargo van was pronounced deceased at the scene. 3 individuals from a civilian vehicle were also pronounced deceased at the scene. And in that vehicle were a 60-year-old, a 55-year-old, and an infant.
Police say the incident started east of Toronto in Clarington, Ontario, when an off-duty officer noticed a robbery unfolding at 7:50 Monday night at this liquor store. Multiple reports suggested the robber pulled out a knife, leading to this chase, which is now being questioned by a former OPP commissioner.
The officers that are in the chase can stop at any time they see fit. The sergeant on the road or supervisor in the road or supervisors in the comm center all have the ability to end it and say, stop, end it right now.
There are reports tonight that during the chase, a police dispatch call went out warning someone was going to get hurt. The case is now in the hands of Ontario's Special Investigations Unit, who are responsible for piecing together this tragedy and the role officers played. Adrian Gabriel, CTV News, Toronto.
Pro-Palestinian demonstrators at Montreal's McGill say they will stand their ground after the university said today they are requesting police assistance to deal with the encampment and in the face of an injunction brought by 2 students to force the removal of the encampment. Here's CTV's Quebec Bureau Chief Geneviève Beauchemin.
On the rain-drenched McGill campus, pro-Palestinian demonstrators continue to settle in. Resolved, say organizers, not to break camp.
When we organized this, we did say that we were ready for any situation, and we are ready for any situation.
Let's go! We will not stop, we will not rest!
This in defiance of McGill's latest statement that after failing to reach a resolution with protesters, university leadership decided to take the final step in campus protocol and request police assistance. Demonstrators, though, saw little evidence of a looming crackdown.
I think police is more willing to negotiate rather than repress, like they did in the U.S., but we can't be too sure anyway.
Still, the encampment and McGill itself face a legal challenge. Two students filed a request for an emergency injunction. Their lawyer asking the judge this afternoon to issue an order banning protests within 100 meters of the doors of more than 100 McGill buildings.
There are Canadian values, there are Quebec values, but they are not the values of hate, they are not the values of intimidation, they are not the values of harassment. No Canadian, no Quebecois will tolerate that or accept it, and neither should the courts.
But lawyers arguing against the injunction say it would be an egregious violation of fundamental freedoms.
McGill University, one of the oldest universities, in Canada, and it's a place of debate and it's a place of peaceful protest.
The ruling is expected in the morning. Protesters here continue to say this is an indefinite protest and they will stay here until their demands are met. They have joined the wave of protesters south of the border demanding universities divest from companies with business ties to Israel. For instance, any investment McGill may hold in Lockheed Martin, supplier of military jets.
We're proud of the students, and we're proud to be part of a global movement all over the world that's standing for what's right.
And protesters say they're far from ready to pack up and move on. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
And dramatic scenes in New York late tonight where police have descended on the campus of Columbia University and have started making arrests.
IOF, they're all the same. NYPD, KKK. IOF, they're all the same.
Dozens of officers in riot gear were seen climbing into the historic building that has been occupied by protesters who are calling on the university to sell off investments in companies that have ties to Israel. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbin on the tense escalation.
Tonight, New York police mobilizing and moving in on Columbia University, the heart of the pro-Palestinian demonstrations. This after dozens of protesters broke into historic Hamilton Hall, breaking down doors and windows and scuffling with other students.
You're shoving me!
Barricading themselves inside, refusing to come out until the university cuts financial ties with Israel. Tensions reaching a new high. Police say what should have been a peaceful protest has been co-opted by professional agitators seen in black bloc attire.
They're here to create discord and divisiveness. That is why I'm urging every student and every protester to walk away from this situation now and continue your advocacy through other means.
Back up! New York's mayor urged students to leave the campus immediately as tensions boiled over in other states.
Oh my God.
In Virginia, protesters clashed with police in riot gear using what appears to be pepper spray. Similar tactics in North Carolina and other colleges across America. Human rights groups are troubled by the police crackdowns. More than 1,100 people have been arrested as student revolts rock dozens of campuses. Republicans blame the schools for letting it get out of control.
They are threatening their students' lives. They are chanting death to America. At some point, you cross the line.
The White House condemned the forceful occupation of Columbia's campus building, saying it's not a peaceful protest, it's not even free speech, and no doubt there will be charges laid. Omar?
CTV's Joy Malbin in Washington. Protesters also forced their way on the doorstep of Canada's Justice Minister, who said today they crossed the line.
Where the line gets crossed is when protesters arrive at my home, on my driveway, and in front of my home. My family, my wife, my kids do not deserve to be harassed, nor do my neighbors. People have a problem with me. It's my name that's on the ballot. They should come to my office. They should leave my family out of it.
A few dozen pro-Palestinian protesters showed up at Arif Irani's Toronto area home over the weekend. He was not home at the time. Israel renewed its vow today to march into Rafah, quote, with or without a deal, as America's top diplomat landed in Tel Aviv to push for more humanitarian aid into Gaza. Antony Blinken will meet Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tomorrow as part of his 7th tour to the Middle East since Hamas's deadly attack on Israel in October. Donald Trump was handed a $9,000 fine and threatened with jail time for breaching a gag order in his hush money trial. Trump was held in contempt of court for targeting potential witnesses in the case on social media.
You have a judge who's totally conflicted, totally, absolutely conflicted, that he's rushing this case through.
Today, jurors heard from the lawyer who says he brokered the deal to silence Stormy Daniels. Trump is accused of hiding a hush money payment made to the porn star ahead of the 2016 presidential election. He denies all the charges. The U.S. is seeing a troublesome trend in avian flu spreading in the dairy cow population, but so far, it appears Canada has avoided cases. This week, U.S. officials began the process of testing ground beef after inactive traces of the virus were found in milk samples taken from grocery store shelves. Tonight, an influential U.S. task force is asking women to now start screening for breast cancer early, reversing long-standing guidelines. It says regular mammograms should start at 40 instead of 50, citing rising risk to younger women. The guidelines in Canada are set to be updated next month. Breast cancer accounts for approximately 25% of new cases in cancer in the country. London Drug says it is still investigating if customers' personal data was compromised in a massive cyber attack. The pharmacy chain was forced to shut its doors across Western Canada 3 days ago as it grapples with the aftermath of the security breach. Coming up, an offside play.
In an era where women's hockey is surging like it is right now, these words are simply out of touch.
Sexist comments by a coach netting backlash around hockey circles. Plus, the new financial outlook for Canada's costly World Cup. Sexist remarks by an NHL coach after his team lost are raising eyebrows and drawing swift criticism. Here's CTV's Heather Wright on what was said and the reaction.
This is one of two Tampa Bay goals called back last night in the Lightning's 6-1 loss to the Florida Panthers.
I'm going to address this.
With his team eliminated, head coach John Cooper criticized the calls in his post-game news conference, with language he's now being criticized for using.
It's like prison rules in the playoffs, but it's not prison rules for the goalie. Like the second something happens, we might as well put skirts on them then.
The comments have been slammed as old-fashioned and sexist, part of a hockey culture many are trying to change.
In an era where women's hockey is surging like it is right now, these words are simply out of touch.
The last few years have seen a surge in popularity of women's sport. In its first season, the PWHL has sold out hockey arenas. And for the first time ever, this year's women's NCAA March Madness final drew more viewers than the men's.
And people in positions of power like that, where they do have a platform, need to be particularly careful with their words because people are paying attention.
10 years ago, PGA of America President Ted Bishop was fired over similar remarks. He called golfer Ian Poulter a little girl, with the PGA board calling the comments inconsistent with the group's policies. And while a lot has changed since then, experts say these types of comments show more work needs to be done.
To have that really old-fashioned, kind of tired trope of, if a man can't cut it in sport, it must make him feminine. It's nice to see the backlash about it.
Some say Cooper had legitimate complaints about how last night's game was called that have since been overshadowed. We reached out to the Tampa Bay Lightning for comment and haven't heard back. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
Still ahead, rampage on the streets of a London suburb. A man wielding a sword kills a teenager and injures police officers. More than 12,000 people living near a bubbling volcano are at risk and have been forced to evacuate several islands in Indonesia. Burning ash, smoke, and lava were spewing from Mount Ruang this morning, sparking a tsunami warning. The eruption forced the closure of a nearby international airport. Elon Musk abruptly gutted most of Tesla's supercharger team of 500 employees in a fresh round of layoffs, including 2 senior executives. This sudden shift blindsided virtually every major automaker in the U.S., gearing up to equip new EVs for customers to use the Tesla supercharger network. Tesla shares fell more than 5.5% on the news. An attacker went on a rampage in East London, killing a 14-year-old boy and wounding 4 others. Video shows the suspect wielding what appears to be a sword. Police arrested the man after he drove a car into a home, then proceeded to stab members of the public. Police do not believe it is terror-related. King Charles called the attacks horrific and offered his thoughts and prayers to all those affected as he stepped back into his public duties today for the first time since his cancer diagnosis. He appeared in good spirits, the King meeting with medical specialists and patients at a cancer treatment center in London. It was his first of several public engagements planned in the weeks ahead as the King continues his recovery. After the break, the cost to host one of the world's biggest sporting events. The hype surrounding the World Cup headed for British Columbia is building up, but so is the total score sheet on the cost. We learned today that the cost of bringing the sporting spectacle here will be millions more than initially thought. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Andrew Johnson breaks down the price tag of hosting the beautiful game.
2 years before a World Cup goal will be scored at BC Place, the province and city are already celebrating.
This is an experience that is once in a lifetime for British Columbia.
It's going to be a month-long commercial. The whole globe is going to be watching Vancouver.
That commercial is getting a lot more expensive. The estimated cost is double what taxpayers were told 2 years ago, jumping from around $250 million to now in the range of $500 million or more. The increase is being blamed on inflation, stadium improvements required by FIFA, and the city now hosting 7 matches instead of 5. The much bigger price tag will be shared by the City of Vancouver and the province. The joint bid is also banking on close to $400 million in revenue, including more than $100 million kicked in by the feds and more than $200 million from a new hotel tax, bringing the net cost to host 7 matches to between $100 and $150 million. Long-term, the province claims the economic benefit will be huge, including 1 million additional visitors within 5 years, more than $1 billion more in visitor spending, and another $1 billion added to the provincial GDP.
These fans are going to be eating, they're going to be staying, and they're going to be exploring British Columbia.
But one economist isn't buying the hype or the numbers.
It's going to cost more than what's expected. The net benefit is going to be, if positive, very small.
Increased World Cup costs were also revealed 2 months ago in Toronto, leaving Mayor Olivia Chow less than enthusiastic.
Well, I'm saddled with it.
A very different tone today from her West Coast colleague.
We are literally hosting 30 to 40 Super Bowl equivalents in the city of Vancouver over a month-long period. This is a no-brainer.
A city counting on scoring big in 2026 and beyond. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Vancouver.
And that's a snapshot of this Tuesday. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and see you tomorrow.